Hi again everyone. I've been having a lot of fun making a synth sound out of a gated fuzz and some phaser and some reverb, and I'm using the EHX Attack Decay, and we can try it out in a few genres and see how it sounds. Not bad with drum and bass. And maybe we could even try out something like future bass, a bit slower. Same synth, just different drums. Alright, that's pretty wicked, I gotta say. So I'm using a similar setup to I was in a previous liquid drum and bass video, and the only thing I've added is the use of the EHX Attack Decay, which will take your notes and stop them and trigger them if you hit hard enough. So that means that it'll only make a little blip that is fuzzed out. Without the fuzz, it's just a short little note like a banjo. And yeah, before we dive in, that's basically how it's done. Then you add some super cool flanger. Without it, it would be, you know, just like, sounds a bit like a square wave. And with the flanger, it just sounds like a bit more movement to that square wave. Almost like detune. And a whole bunch of reverb. Without it, it's kind of dry and boring. You know, really not as atmospheric as it is with a whole bunch of reverb. And because there's not too many notes at once, I've got a long tail on that reverb. And in fact a really long pre-delay before it kicks in, so it's bouncing off a ping pong wall really far away. Like a cathedral. Yeah, so let's dive into it, and I'll just give you one more look at how it's all done. Okay, diving in. As usual, my guitar is a drum trigger, so there's one under the scratch plate, which is wired through this cable in stereo to the Roland TM-2 Trigger Module, and my left hand has a thumb ring with which I smack the neck and it sets off that snare trigger. Alright, and yeah, that's where I get all my drum sounds from, and done a little demo on that before, so you can look that one up if you're wondering how it's all done. The actual guitar signal is split up, whereby one duplicate of the guitar sets off hi-hats. And in this case it's setting off a ride cymbal. And that's just to add a little bit more movement to the drums. Then the guitar signal is also routed into an octaver. That octaver just puts out a sub-octave into the bass synthesizer, which is actually sidechained against the kick and the snare, using a little complicated input on the side there where it says sidechain. Not too hard to do, but really cool, great effect. And everything is compressed just so that it doesn't go too loud and pop a speaker or something. Then as for the actual guitar signal, apart from the sub-octave going through all the synths and stuff, the guitar's running into a EHX Attack Decay, where it is turned into a very staccato sort of banjo-y sound that it fuzzes out afterwards. So without the fuzz, it's, and of course without the ride, it's. Okay. And I've killed the bass because if you have a little too much bass being fed into this thing, it sort of just dominates the whole sound, and all you hear is one big yeah, then you add a whole bunch of fuzz, and the gated settings are that it allows the attack through in full. You know, it's as percussive as possible, but the note gets cut off really quickly. If you have a little bit longer, you know, it'll eventually decay, but you want to stop it in its tracks at the very beginning. It's not in poly mode, which means that it's waiting for a loud enough threshold before it re-triggers and, you know, lets through a new note. So you got to be a little bit quiet. Sometimes it misfires. I'm hitting a note consistently. But if you start playing inconsistently, it starts sort of re-triggering all over the place there. Alright. And yeah, then this Liqua-Flange does a pretty cool phaser, and I've just been running that entire fuzz signal through that, adding on a whole bunch of reverb with a really long decay and quite a bit of pre-delay just to create a bit more atmosphere, and everything is once again being limited by a compressor, which is actually just an ordinary guitar compressor. Also, one cool thing about the compressor is that it is allowing the reverb to sort of swell a bit. Right, so the reverb's not actually that loud, and it's bringing up the volume of the reverb when I'm not playing a note. But when I am playing a note, then it gets out the way, because the reverb's such a quiet signal. If I turn off the compressor, the reverb's actually pretty short, or quiet, should I say. Long tail, but quite quiet. And this just allows it to go on for longer. Alright, so there you go, that's how it's done. A cool little fuzzy synth with a gated fuzz through the Attack Decay and a bunch of phaser, reverb, and hey presto, you've got a pretty cool synth. Alright, so if you like what you heard, feel free to subscribe, because there are more mad guitar experiments with drum triggers to come in the future, and I'd love you to be there for that. Cool, bye.